Hey everybody, wait and see if this is gonna work. My internet is acting slow today. All right, looks like we are ready to go. So I just wanted to come on and give another update. I have been through a couple more webinars and we've gotten some more kind of solid information on different programs out there for small business owners and regarding the cash payment program for individual people. So I just wanted to go over that for a few minutes, just the latest information we have out there. I'll start with the simplest one, which is the cash payment program for individuals. So just a few notes on that. You have to file your tax return in order to get the cash payment or be qualified for the cash payment. This is in regards to that $1,200 payment per individual, $500 per kid kind of thing that they're trying to kind of give as a stimulus to every American. So the basics of that are you'll get $1,200 for each taxpayer based on income that filed a return. That limit is up to, so if you make more than $75,000 as an individual, it'll start scaling down from that $1,200. If you're a couple, you'll get $2,400 per couple. Assuming you don't make more than $150K for the year, that's also on a sliding scale over the $150. So it starts to decrease that $2,400 payment there. And then you get $500 per child. Some people have asked, is there a max on the child? No. Whatever child that you're supporting in your home that is yours, you'll get the $500 for. If it's done by check, you'll get it by mail. That'll probably take several weeks, maybe months if we know the IRS. If you signed up for direct deposit if you had a refund or you were paying taxes, that'll be transmitted electronically to you. I also learned that if you are receiving Social Security, you are still eligible. So all Social Security people will still be eligible for this stimulus check as well. And just how you receive your Social Security check is how you'll receive the stimulus check. If you're on disability, it was told to us that you may need to file a return if you don't. So even if it's like a zero return or whoever, get with the tax preparer about that. But if you're on disability only, you may need to file a tax return in order to get the $1,200 check, stimulus check. So just check with your local tax return preparer on that. There is a calculator for this stimulus check on the Washington Post's website. So you can go there, enter how much you make or how much you made last year or whatever, and kind of get a calculation on what your check will look like. Some people have asked, is the cash disbursement taxable next year as income? Sometimes that happens when you get a refund, it's taxable next year. This is not the case. No, this stimulus check will not be taxable next year when you go to file your return. Things to note about this: if you owe taxes when you're filing your return, what's going to happen is the stimulus check will go against the liability that you owe. So, for instance, if you owe $1,000 when you file your tax return and you qualify for $1,200 of the stimulus check, then you're going to get $200 back. They're going to take $1,000 of that to pay for your liability. So if you owe taxes, it's going to reduce your liability. If you don't owe taxes, you're going to just get that as a refund. And then there's also been questions on, what if I get a refund? Does that affect my stimulus check? And what I've read and learned is no. You'll still get your refund and you would get the stimulus check on top of that. So I think that kind of covers the basics of the cash payment program and how you would qualify. You got to file your tax return and all of those things. So moving on to the small business side of things and these programs that are out there and set up right now. I talked a little bit about them last Friday when that stuff was getting ready to be signed. The CARES Act was signed on Friday evening, so now everything is kind of pushed forward. We're getting ready to go. So let's just talk about the programs that are out there really quickly. I'm going to go over those really quickly, and then we can kind of talk about eligibility, who qualifies, how do I file, what do I need to do, yada, yada, yada. So the 4 programs that they're kind of considering available is the EIDL program. That's the small business loan that you apply for on SBA.gov. That's basically an SBA loan. So whatever you borrow, you are going to owe back. That's a loan. The purpose of the EIDL loan is to allow you to get some cash quickly for the next 3 to 6 months of your business as it's kind of unknown right now. And that EIDL program loan comes with a $10,000 grant. So when you apply for it, people are going to automatically get the $10,000 grant, even if you don't qualify for the EIDL loan itself. So you won't have to pay back that $10,000 grant, but you have to meet some SBA criteria in order to do that. So I'll talk about that in a few minutes when I talk about eligibility. But the EIDL program is a small business administration loan from SBA.gov/disaster. That's where you apply for that. They've simplified that process. You just hit apply. It's going to ask you some questions. You're going to fill it out, and it'll end up going to the SBA. You'll hear from an SBA person within a couple of days or a week or so, probably. The other program is the Payroll Protection Program loan, which is also being called the Payroll Loan Forgiveness. Some people are calling it a grant, whatever. Anyway, Payroll Protection Program is really what it's called. That also is similar to an SBA loan. As of Monday, you do not apply for this payroll loan on SBA.gov. You find a local SBA lender, so a bank. You can find any of the local SBA lenders. If it's your bank you want to look at, just find out if they're a preferred SBA lender. And you can apply today. They cannot run the process yet, but you can send all of your stuff to your banker and get in line for once they get all of the direction to be able to apply. So they're hoping by the end of this week they'll be able to kind of submit all of that stuff and get the funding ready. But a couple of the local banks here in Mississippi are already taking that information, so it's time for you to kind of get it together. It's financial reports, it's payroll data, things like that. So we'll kind of talk about that here in a minute. Qualifications, eligibility, all of those things. So we got EIDL program, which is an SBA loan. We got the loan forgiveness, the Payroll Protection Program loan forgiveness that you apply at your bank. They've also got the IRS retention credit. So this you really need to talk to your CPA about. This is basically a credit against payroll taxes due on your tax return, as far as I can understand. The max credit for this is $5,000. So you just need to figure out if that's the better way for you to go. You cannot get the EIDL and PPE loan and get the retention tax credit. If you pick the retention tax credit, you can't apply for the PPE loan. You have to do one or the other. So they cannot be used in conjunction with each other. Now the EIDL program and the payroll forgiveness loan, you can apply for both of those. And we'll kind of talk about examples as to why you would need both or why you wouldn't here shortly. So EIDL program loan, payroll protection loan, and IRS retention credit. And then the individual program is that cash payment program I spoke about in the very beginning. So with that, let's move on to kind of what these two different loans for small businesses are. So the Paycheck Protection Program is one that you go apply to your local bank or SBA lender. What this is covering 8 weeks of payroll and some operational expenses. So those are pretty well defined right now. Payroll is going to be, so what's 8 weeks of payroll cost for you? So that's wages, salaries, group health benefits, cash tips are included, paid vacation is included. So anything that it costs you to run payroll, that's going to be your employer taxes, things like that. What is that going to cost you for the next 8 weeks? That's what you want to get this Paycheck Protection Program loan for. So it's covering 8 weeks of payroll, and the operational expenses that it's covering are things like interest on debt obligations. So not the principal payments, but your interest on those debt obligations. Mortgage, if your business owns a building and you're paying your mortgage. Rent or lease. So if you're renting an office space or leasing an office space, figure out what that's costing you for 8 weeks. And then utilities. So your utilities would be, power, sewer, trash, water. What's that going to cost you for the next 8 weeks? And then also, what was the other thing? Insurance premiums for the next 8 weeks. So those are what they're considering operational costs. So figure out your payroll and those specific operational costs for the next 8 weeks. And that's the amount of the Paycheck Protection loan that you want to take out. One thing to mention is that that's going to be forgiven if you use the funds for those things. So if I get a loan for 8 weeks of my payroll and 8 weeks of that operational cost, and that's $50,000, and I get that loan and I use every penny of that to pay those expenses, I'm going to have proof that I paid those expenses. At the end of those 8 weeks, or within 6 months, I think, you turn in your proof that you made those payments and you use that money for that, and that loan is essentially forgiven. You don't have to pay for it. It's basically like a debt cancellation, but that's also not taxable next year for you. So the reason they're doing this is to keep people employed and keep businesses open and keeping people paid, basically. So it's, kind of a stimulus for small businesses, I guess, is what you could consider it. There are some things, questions in terms of if I've already laid off people and I hire them back, can I apply for this loan? The answer is yes. If you want 100% of this reimbursed or forgiven, you have to hire back 90% of the people that you laid off. Okay, does that make sense? So you can't apply for the 50,000 and only have 2 people working out of the 15 that you let go, and then get 100% of that forgiven. So it's kind of going to be a sliding scale. You just want to be careful of some of those rules. You have to have been in business as of February 15th to apply for this PPE program. And I believe that you have to have less than 500 employees on this as well. So you have to meet the original SBA criteria, which has been in business since February 15th, have under 500 employees, things like that. There are a couple other things in here. If you have highly compensated employees that are paid over $100,000 annually, that's capped. So they gave an example today. If you have an employee that makes $200,000 a year, you can't figure out that 8 weeks of payroll at his $200,000 a year monthly salary. You have to bump it down to $100K. So they're only going to pay 100. They're only going to forgive $100K comparison, their average monthly amount there, or the 8 weeks. Okay, so sole proprietors and 1099 contractors can apply for the PPE program. So if you're a hairdresser or you're a 1099 contractor or sole proprietor, you can apply for this. You're going to have to show proof of your operating expenses, of your income. So I believe they said it's going to be net income. So you have to kind of look back. What have I made in the last 12 months or even last 6 months? That's what you're going to want to apply for. You don't really want to inflate those because you're going to end up having to show proof that you paid this money and that you historically haven't made more than what you're asking for. But yes, sole proprietors and 1099 contractors can apply for PPE. Let's see what else we got. Oh, the terms here. You have to spend the PPE money within the first 8 weeks of getting the PPE loan. So that's the credit that you're getting for. So if I apply next week and I get the money on Friday, my 8 weeks starts that Friday for the expenses that have been incurred, right? You're going to have to provide evidence that you retained employees or rehired them. The forgiveness will be reduced pro rata for workforce reduction. So if you laid off some people and could only hire so many back, make sure the loan amount you're asking for on this PPE is relevant to the people you're hiring back, not who you had before. Don't get too much, more than you need or more than you're going to get forgiven. If you're thinking about reducing salaries, you can do that and apply for the PPE loan, but you can only reduce salaries up to 25% of what you originally were paying them. So you can't cut their salaries at 50% and apply for this loan to get that forgiven. It can't be more than that 25%. At the end of the 8-week period, and you provide the proof and you make sure that you spent the money on that. If you spent less or didn't use all of the money that you got for the PPE loan, the rest of that's going to be turned into a conventional SBA loan. So if you borrowed $60,000, but you only paid $50,000 in payroll and operational expenses, that's all the proof that you have. The other $10,000 you're going to owe that as a normal loan. So it will transition into a conventional loan at 4% interest. And that's a loan term of 10 years. The good thing about the PPE loan forgiveness program is there's no borrower fees or no lender fees, and there's no prepayment terms. So if you want to pay that $10,000 off before the 10 years, you don't get dinged because you pay it off sooner than that. There's no minimum credit score to apply for the PPE loan. So this is to help you stay open and help keep your employees employed. You have to retain employees during that 8-week period because you're getting the money to pay for that. So there was a question today about what if I have to let people go within that 8-week time frame? Whatever that is going to be prorated, and you're not going to be forgiven that if you've already been given the money for the whole 8-week period for the amount of employees that you applied for, if that makes sense. You cannot receive forgiveness for previous expenses prior to the forgiveness loan. So if you currently have employees right now you're paying, this forgiveness loan can't be applied to today. It's applied to the date you get the loan and that next 8-week period time frame. So that was something learned today. You do not have to have a personal guarantee or collateral support for this PPE loan. So that's different than normal loans. If you're a small business owner, you have to personally guarantee the business is going to pay it back, or you're going to have to pay it back. In this case, for this PPE loan, you do not have to personally guarantee it. So moving on to the EIDL loan. So the PPE loan, remember, is forgivable at the 8-week period that you turn in all the expenses, and it's only an 8-week period of time. If you're thinking that your business is going to kind of struggle through this for the next 3 to 6 months, then it's probably a good time to think through, I'm going to need some cash in my business if I don't have it right now to be able to pay some expenses to get back up and running, right? So if you're a restaurant that had to close or something like that and you reopen at the end of April, you've been closed for a month, you got to make a huge food order, right? So cost of goods sold. and you may not have the money because you haven't been open for a month. So that would be a good instance to apply for this EIDL loan, which is a small business economic disaster relief loan. So it has a little bit more easier qualifications to get it and things of that nature. The EIDL loan, this is the one where you apply on sba.gov/disaster. That's the simple process. You just answer some questions. You do have to have a personal guarantee over $200,000 loan. So if you're asking for more than $200,000, you will have to have a personal guarantor on that. This loan, where the PPE is not based on your credit score, this loan is going to be, they're going to take that into effect. And the other thing to remember on the EIDL loan is there's no forgiveness on the EIDL loan. This is money just like a loan that you're going to need to pay back. So don't take more than you're going to need because you're going to owe it back. You don't have to start paying on it for 12 months. The payments can be deferred up to 12 months. So that's nice to kind of allow your business to get back into starting to generate revenue, being able to pay things back and all those things. But just remember that PPE is the forgiveness loan for the 8-week period. The EIDL loan is a loan for cash flow purposes for other things that you're going to need to keep going for the next 3 to 6 months. And that is, you're going to owe that back. That's money owed back. There is a $10,000 emergency grant that's kind of attached to this EIDL loan. So if you apply for the EIDL loan, you can choose to have a $10,000 like given to you very quickly. They're saying within 3 days, but I don't know how fast they're processing applications right now. But the $10,000 grant, if you apply for the EIDL loan and you get the $10,000 emergency grant and you don't get qualified for the EIDL loan, you get to keep the $10,000 grant. So that's yours to just pay whatever you need to pay in the business. If you're applying for the 8-week PPE loan and then the EIDL loan also to cover expenses after that 8 weeks, you're going to get the $10,000 through the EIDL loan, but it's going to transition over to your PPE loan, okay, if you get both. So you can't apply for the PPE loan for $50K and then apply for the EIDL loan and get the $10,000. You're not getting $60K. At the end of the day, the $10,000 is rolling over to this PPE loan, forgiveness loan. So that's if you apply for both. You also cannot use the EIDL funds and the PPE funds for the same purpose. So payroll for 8 weeks, operation expenses for 8 weeks is paid for with your PPE money. The EIDL loan is for things after that 8 weeks or for cost of goods sold or something else that's not payroll or operational in that way. And you're going to kind of have to prove this stuff. So, you know, you're not going to be able to kind of get free money. You have to prove that you're using the money for those purposes. So bookkeeping and coding and all those things, keeping track of the funds that you're paying out, that's important here to do. I think that covers kind of most of the questions that came from people from my first video. One thing I have noticed that's coming out is tons of scams. So with all of this, check your website when you're on there. Make sure you're going to sba.gov, nothing else. I don't know what else will pop up, but you want to be on reliable sites when you're applying for things. You want, you know, I've been getting text messages from, I don't even know how they got my number, but I've been getting text messages. We're ready for your pre-approved loan, you know, sign here. Those are all scam things. Like, contact your local SBA lenders to help you get this PPE loan going. There's no credit score here for this loan. There's no personal guarantee. Like, you want to go through a local reliable source and reliable bank to get this funding. So make sure that the things that, don't click on email links unless you know they're specifically coming from your banker or the person that you're working with or sba.gov. Those are ways that, you can get viruses, and who wants all that during all of this mess. So just make sure that you're paying attention to emails through this time. You're going to get flooded with tons of scam stuff, so just be careful about that. Make sure it's coming from a reliable source. As always, email us, check us out on totherescuebookkeeping.com on Facebook here, Instagram. You can email us at hblankenship@ttrsq.net if you have additional questions. The local chamber websites are great resources on this stuff, and the U.S. Chamber website is great resources on this stuff. I'm trying to pull out all kind of basic and relative information for people, because there's a lot of verbiage and terminology that they're using for our industry, but it's hard for the small business owner to kind of understand it all, and it's a lot of information. So also, if you're wanting to apply for this stuff, you got to make sure that you have financials. You're going to have a P&L and a balance sheet and information that you've been in business since February 15th, things like that. So getting all of that together. I know that the local SBA office can help with that stuff too. We're also here to help if you have questions or need help getting that stuff together. And share this video so that it gets out to other small business owners. Really, we just really want to educate you guys and let you know what's out there during this time. So thanks for joining. Have a great day.